Hi everyone. I have read your discussion board posts and reviewed the first part of your portfolio today and have given you feedback for those assignments in Blackboard. Both of those assignments don't allow you to attach comments in the body of the work, so all of the comments that you're going to have are going to be in the associated rubric for your review. Just a brief comment about the discussion boards. If you read through copyright and fair use and open access and the Teach Act, and your head was spinning and you were thinking, oh my heavens, I'm not sure I'm doing this right, or I still don't understand it, join the club. It is a very complex topic. Many educators aren't even aware that these guidelines exist, and therefore they're not following them at all. The hope in giving you this assignment when I developed it was to heighten your awareness that there were laws that governed how we used other people's material in an educational setting. So if that is all that we got accomplished, that's okay. Your next steps are, when you begin to function as an educator, that you are very thoughtful and very cautious about whose material you use, and that you don't hamper your own creativity by using other people's works, but that you know how to properly cite it and what's allowed by law. So if your head's still spinning, that's okay. The idea was to get the information out there to let you know. One of your classmates did a really nice job of connecting this complex issue with a biblical foundation. Your classmate Samantha wrote in her discussion board, "This topic is more than just rules and regulations that need to be followed. For us as followers of Christ, it is a matter of ethical responsibility. God desires us to follow his commands in every area of our life. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 15, God clearly tells his followers in the Ten Commandments that we should not steal. And to me, that includes the ideas of others. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 3 explains that when we do the right thing, it pleases God more than any sacrifice we could ever give him. Scripture is not shy when it comes to this topic, and I don't think we should be either. Following God's command protects our hearts and the hearts of others. To me, this area is just another way we can honor God through our actions." I think Samantha did a wonderful job kind of putting all of this together and really putting it under the umbrella of how Christian nurse leaders and Christian nurse educators should behave in an academic setting. We need to do our best to honor the work of other people and to give credit where credit is due. And I think Samantha did a really nice job kind of wrapping those terms up for us. So I appreciate the efforts there. Okay, the portfolios. You guys are off to such a good start with these. If you feel like this format's a little wonky and you're not quite sure you're doing it right, that's the reason this is done in iterations. We do part 1, part 2, part 3. If we gave it to you and said, here are all the guidelines, submit it at the end for 300 points, you would first feel a little overwhelmed by that. And second, at the end, your end product would not be as polished as it needs to be. So if you were given feedback this week on ways to improve part 1, know that things that you had points deducted for are things that need to be fixed before you submit part 2. If I gave you comments and there weren't any points, it was just, hey, have you thought about doing this or consider doing this? That's entirely up to you. They're just suggestions for making improvements. Because resumes are very personal, there are things that I've suggested and said, hey, have you thought about doing this? If there were no points deducted in that section, that's a suggestion. If you lost points, it's a you need to go fix. When you submit part 2, this is going to be an ongoing assignment. So part 2, when you submit it in Blackboard, it's going to have part 1 with it because it's the same file. I'm going to go back to part 1 and just run over and make sure that if you had suggestions that were made, that you've made those required suggested changes. And then I'll pick up with part 2. I'll do the same thing with part 3. When I grade part 3, I'm going to start on the very first launch page, and I'm going to begin looking at it with fresh eyes and begin to think, okay, is this a polished, well refined, creative, innovative portfolio that captures my interest, is aesthetically pleasing, is professional, and gives me the opportunity to really get to know the candidate that I'm looking at. Remember, portfolios and resumes, all of those tools are there to get you an interview. The interview gets you the job. But if your portfolio or your resume or CV or whatever tool you're using isn't your best foot forward, that effort may fall flat. So that's going to be the lens I'm going to use when I look at this final part 3. So I'm going to encourage you that before you start part 2, you open up part 3, you get the feedback, you polish and make changes, and then you begin part 2. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks. But I do want you to know that the expectation is that you make changes as needed for part 1 before you start part 2, especially those that are required. Several of you struggled with knowing what to do with denoting the NLN core competency. And again, that was the bracket with the number of the competency that was covered in that section. It is expected that in every single submission section of this assignment, of this portfolio, that you have denoted the NLN core competencies. So in your professional expertise, you should have some NLN core competencies denoted in brackets, those numbers 1 through 8. And then in your educational section or your teaching philosophy section, you should have some denoted in brackets. Your resume was a little bit more difficult, and if you chose to put those in the header grouped together, that's okay. Other files, you're going to want to put them specifically where they occur in the body of your work. Artifacts is another one that you're probably going to do a brief introduction of. This is the artifact and why it's here, and then in that header, put the brackets of the NLN core competencies. So that requirement's not going away. So go ahead and make those adjustments to part 1 if you missed that step, and intend to do it in part 2 and part 3 of your portfolio. You just want to be consistent. The idea is, if I'm a dean of a nursing school or the head of an education department, and you have put the competencies in there, I'm going to know how your work relates to the job you really want to do as a nurse educator. And somewhere on your launch page, you may want to put a little asterisk and say, these are the core competencies that are in brackets. It's normally implied, but if not, you can go ahead and do that. It's not required, just a suggestion. Okay, so let's talk about next week. Your integrative literature part 3 is due. With this video, I'm going to send a hyperlink to an Adobe Spark video that I put together that walks you through how to develop a PICO question. It's just some guidelines on thinking through how to develop a PICO question. Before you start writing part 1, get a blank sheet of paper or open up a Word document and type PICO and write your PICO question. Enter the P, enter the I, enter the C, enter the O, and under it, write the whole PICO question. And here's why. Your PICO is going to drive your integrative literature review. So if you have no clarity about what your PICO question is, you're going to wander all over the map, and you are not going to have clarity in part 1. Part 1 needs to be a concise blueprint of how you're going to research a population of interest specific to an intervention that is relevant to a nurse educator compared to a current standard of practice, and then the outcome you are specifically looking at. And be sure there's just one outcome that you're looking at. If you try to measure multiple outcomes, you're going to get in over your head. The idea is to teach you the process with this integrative literature review, not let you get lost and mired down in an overly complex PICO question. So keep it simple, keep it relevant. Remember that part 1 is the blueprint. You should not have done your integrative literature review yet. You shouldn't have 20 to 25 articles yet. You need to do part 1, which is, this is the reason this topic is important. This is my PICO question, and these are the steps that I'm going to follow when I go into the literature to drill down to find the most relevant articles that are out there. The Prisma model steps are there to guide your development of your project. You can use that to create subsections for your paper. Do not copy and paste those long headers, but just general ideas to guide my reading and your writing. Use it to organize it. When you begin part 1, remember to use level 1 and level 2 headings. When you're done with this paper, you're going to have level 1, 2, 3, and likely 4 headings. So if that's not a strength of yours, if you struggle with that, get your APA book out and start reading about that and make plans for that. Your reference list, start building it and using good structure when you're building it. I am going to give you feedback on part 1 well ahead of the time that you're going to need to be starting part 2. So if you're wandering out in the forest eating fruits and berries, I promise we will get part 1 tightened up before you are up against a timeline for part 2. Okay? Baby steps, folks. Do not feel overwhelmed, and well, I can't tell you how to feel. I'm going to encourage you to trust the process, to take part 1 as one chunk, get feedback, and let's walk through part 1 if you're struggling to get you ready for part 2. The idea in this assignment is not to make you panic, but to teach you the process. Because as soon as we cut you loose and you graduate and you're out there in practice, you're going to have to do research. And this methodical, thoughtful, process-oriented way of gathering literature to inform either a future research project or inform a change in practice, it is vital that you use a scripted process, that you're not out there hunting and pecking and picking in odds and ends in the database to answer a question too narrowly. So I hope that is helpful. I'll send the link to the Adobe Spark video just as little brief baby steps. Use the Ask the Professor link for any who, what, when, where, how kind of questions. Anything that's specific to you that you're struggling with that's personal, that other people would not, that other people wouldn't necessarily be interested in, please feel free to send that to me privately. The Ask the Professor link is just for efficiency and to help answer common questions. So just know that I'm always here on a personal level to answer questions that you're more comfortable in that venue. So know that I'm here. I pray that you all are having a wonderful week. I think I said I live in Roanoke, and we had this snow ice storm, and I have beagles who do not know what to do with snow, even less to do with ice. So as you can see over my left shoulder, I guess it would be my right in your world, Madeline the Super Beagle has worn herself out playing with ice chunks in the front yard. You can't see Gracie, but she's in the front door taking a sun bath because she is equally tired. So that has been the sum of my weekend. I've been chasing dogs and trying to get them to go potty in the snow and ice. It is zero fun. So if you have fur babies at home and you have been dealing with any inclement weather, bless you. Maybe there's a tutorial on how to do that. Well, that's what Adobe Spark needs, is a tutorial on how to get your dogs to go potty in the snow and ice. Maybe that'll be my next project when I'm not busy. Okay, have a great week. Be in touch if I can help you at all, if I can pray for you in any way. Know that I'm here and I'm thinking about you. You are in week 3, which means you have even fewer weeks left to go before you are going to be out in the real world, all graduated. I know I'm excited for you. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Take care.